is bringing you conservative conversations, commentary and content. And now you can access these important discussions in the format that you prefer. Watch, read, listen. You can watch our content on our website, familyfirst.nz. Simply click on the Watch tab and you'll see all our various programs that you can view. You can also watch these across our social media channels: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, TikTok, Threads and Blue Sky. Everywhere. If you'd prefer to listen while you go about your daily activities or are travelling in a vehicle, then click on the Listen tab and the latest content is there for you to listen to. You can also find us on Spotify under Family First NZ. And if you prefer to read our commentary, then click on the Read tab. We're increasing the frequency of our written commentary, focusing on the latest research and analysing the current news events which are relevant to families and society. We provide the insight and context which you won't get from the mainstream media. We're also now adding the full scripts of Family Matters and McBlog under the video link in our website, and also written summaries on our live stream shows so that you can read and digest the material at your own pace. Consume our conservative conversations in the way that best suits you. Watch, read, listen. Go to familyfirst.nz and join the conversation.
Good morning everyone and welcome to Solid Ground. I think this is like the 115th show by my count, but look, welcome along. It is wonderful to have you all here. Regulars will know I always love to hear from you, and there's a whole pile coming through the comments already. But a reminder to everyone, if you want to be part of Solid Ground, if you have questions, comments, thoughts on what we're discussing, or of course on things which are happening which I'm not discussing, and you go, hey Simon, what do you think about this? Know that you can comment live through Family First Facebook channel or through its YouTube channel. So head over there if you want your comments to come into me live here in the studio. If you're on my Facebook page or you're on Instagram or X or Substack, wonderful to have you along here on Solid Ground. But at the same time, it doesn't, the comments are there, but I can't see them until after the show. So look, welcome along. Solid Ground is where we talk the issues of the day. Bob and I, well, he does Daybreak, and I do Solid Ground as we do these morning shows. There's the little button. I'm a bit slow this morning. I can see some comments coming through, people saying it's rather chilly around the country. It's not as bad here in New Zealand, but I'm probably not working as well this morning. But as I say, we do these live shows every morning, and it's a chance to talk about news that you have read in the mainstream media, and often it's bringing you perspectives and news that you haven't heard. So look, great again to have you all along. And know that, well, you're part of a growing community of people. So I'll do what I always do, which is to say good morning to the lovely people who have busily sent through their comments. So Harrison, good morning. We've got Mike as well. Rosie is one of those, telling me how cold it is this morning down in beautiful Taupo. Jackie, it is lovely to have you there. Lynette, good morning. Edmund, always a pleasure to have you along. Nigel, good morning. Now, I assume this is Ash and Neems. If I've said that wrong, apologies, but good morning. Lovely to have you all along. And as I say, if you're on other channels other than Family First's Facebook page, as I try to move my seat, if you're on other than the Facebook page of Family First or YouTube, your comments are still there. They're just not coming to me live in the studio like these guys are. Hey, I should probably move to the topic. So good morning to Robin. Look, all these lovely comments coming through. Look, there's so much to talk about. Most of it's actually going to be New Zealand based today, though I will touch a little bit on Iran. You can't, I suggest, ignore the fact that is happening. And Optimum Performance is saying, haven't they reported this is the hottest summer on record? You know what? I haven't actually seen that, which is not contradicting what you're saying. I don't know about you guys, as I get distracted by the weather. This is our British heritage, isn't it? Even though I'm Irish. It's been such a strange summer. Was it November? Certainly up here in Auckland, I suspect around the country. It was so hot and humid. It was so uncomfortable. Then the time we got to Christmas, it's been all that really strange weather. Not cold, but not particularly summery. Then, of course, we had the tragedies, as we know, around Mount Maunganui, Papamoa and elsewhere, those terrible storms. That's just been awful. And then I don't know about you guys. I mean, I've been out of the country actually quite a bit of the time. And I'm about to head off to the country again. Rach and I have just been invited to another conference in a few weeks' time. So planning that. I'm barely ever in the country now. But yeah, then we've gone into this period of broken weather. And then this week, as people said, freezing cold. Been strange, but I wonder Optimum Performance, whether they've, there's also a comment here, I wonder if it's an average, but yeah, it has been strange. And noting it's been the coldest down in Otago. Yeah, this is the irony of weather. Now before I jump, so Rosie's asking, this is always, by the way, guys, while I've got topics in my head and things I load into the production suite here, if there are topics that are on your mind, and Rosie's asked one here about Jevon McSkimming using money to pay for hotels to entertain women. Yeah, look, shocking at one level. But not completely surprised at another. And I better be clear, that's not because I have any insight into McSkimming. In fact, I don't think I've ever met him. It's possible he's been on a select committee and I never noticed. I think it just shows a couple of things. Firstly, the whole moral problem that we're facing. I don't know about you guys, and I suppose partly back in my political life, certainly in my clerical or trainee clerical life, dealing with a lot of people and their issues, I would often say addictions breed addictions. So if someone has, a food addiction, if you will, then they're likely to have an alcohol addiction, a gambling addiction, so on and so forth, or a drug addiction. It really comes in ones. I remember working with people in King's Cross in Sydney, and they were alcoholics, but they also had, if you will, a coffee addiction, like 6 or 7 teaspoons of coffee are going into a mug, and then 8 or 9 sugars. I kid you not. So if you will, a coffee addiction. And then on top of that, there's a drug addiction. And so someone like Jevon McSkimming, obviously an affair problem, a sex problem. So it doesn't surprise me that he's also doing other things wrong, in this case, misusing the police credit card. I'll just make 2 other quick comments, Rosie, into those interested. I mean, one, it shows that the processes aren't working. Police processes are not working as well as they could to have detected this. The second, though, to be fair on police as a whole, it's hard. It's hard to detect these things. If you are a senior commander and you're travelling around the country, it's not unusual that you're going to be staying at hotels. It's, speaking quite plainly, it's why some of the issues with politicians and affairs over the years have been able to happen, because it's not unusual for a politician to be travelling, to be staying in hotels. And often this is more at the ministerial level. You always have to have a staff member with you. So again, it's not unusual. So you can sort of see, without making excuses for it, how it happens. Again, but to be clear, it's not to justify, but you can see how it happens and why you need good processes. And also, I think, speaking somewhat personally, I think I was somewhat trained in this during, I said, when I trained as a priest. You try to create good structures and systems around yourself to avoid the temptations, for want of a better phrase. So you don't go out while drinking. You don't invite people back to your motel or hotel. You keep requisite distances. There's sort of a discipline, I think, you can have, which hopefully hopefully helps. I see piles of comments. Harrison's asking if he can come to the conference. Well, probably won't be able to, Harrison. I suspect part of the reason is the thousands of dollars it's costing. I don't know about you guys at the moment. Flights, oh my lord. Fourth Adam is saying that the spring has been pretty good so far, which is quite true, actually. It's been quite nice. It's nice up here in the treehouse. Glenda's saying it's global cooling, which is good. Optimum Performance is making comments on the police that it's the tip of the iceberg, and then is also referencing the thousands of breath tests. I mean, that is a shocker. Look, there does seem to be somewhat of a culture issue, and I say that with some reservation. I know a number of cops. Some of you know my dad, my late father's an ex-cop, so perhaps I'm a bit biased, but I deal a lot with cops in various ways, and I think overall amazing, but there is clearly some issues there, and it's not just one-off. There is that bit of a cultural issue we need to address. Look, jumping back, and again, like Rosie, if you have other questions on things which are happening or comments on the topics I'm touching on, this came through a publication called the New Zealand Doctor. I used to subscribe to it. I don't anymore. As you might guess, it's primarily for doctors, nurses and other healthcare professionals in New Zealand. I mean, anyone can access the subscription. We do it family first. But this came through, and this is one of the things we warned about years ago as we were debating euthanasia, is basically there was always going to be an imbalance between funding for euthanasia versus funding for palliative care. And a GP in Fiordland, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name, I don't know him, but he's raised a concern, and what he's calling an unethical concern, that basically those performing euthanasia get almost 6 times, you heard that right, 6 times more money than someone providing palliative care. And you'll understand what the conclusion by this doctor is, which is it will drive irresponsible behaviour. So he's saying that on average you get about $500, or actually I think I better back that up. I think he's saying that to perform palliative care, to go out to someone and assist with palliative care, you get about $500. If he were going out, or a physician was going out to perform euthanasia, they'd get over $3,000. So that's that 6 times difference. $500 for palliative care, $3,000 for performing euthanasia. In and of itself, that's wrong, I would suggest, as he does as well. Secondly, it shows you the gross underfunding of palliative care. And I know the parliaments come out, or the governments come out and say they're putting even more money into palliative care. That is fantastic. Kudos to the Minister of Health. I think that's really important. But it's still clearly not enough. In fact, talk to anyone in palliative care, you'll know it's not enough, particularly in the more rural areas. But secondly, the GP here has highlighted a really important element. Even though medicine is meant to be an ethical profession, they're still human beings. And he's saying, look, it's putting in an undue incentive to move toward euthanasia. And I think any of us could do the thought experiment. Not that, well, some of you may be doctors tuning in and might be going, look, that would never happen. But I've been around enough human nature, doctors or otherwise, to know that actually situations can arise where you go, you know what, there is actually a financial or fiduciary benefit to me just to ease someone's suffering. If you were tossing up to go, was it palliative care, is it euthanasia? Well, actually, I get $2,500 more, and look, I'll relieve the person's suffering by terminating them. So good that this GP has raised the issue. Bob and I here at Family First will be following this quite closely to see what the result is. Look, it's not going to stop euthanasia in New Zealand, but I would have 2 hopes. One is it begins to start readdressing the funding imbalance around palliative care. You know I don't support euthanasia. I think it's unethical. Totally, you should care for people, not kill them. But if we're going to have euthanasia here, we should not be underfunding palliative care. It should be on equal terms so people can make actually a true choice, which unfortunately they don't have in New Zealand by and large at the moment. All the incentives are towards euthanasia. And the second point I would make is, again, a lot of this was if you will, foreseen. Many of us fighting against euthanasia sensed strongly during the debates that once it was made legal, we would see all the problems that we have around reporting, that there would be actually a lack of data, a lack of transparency, despite what they try to tell you. That very few doctors would be involved with it, and that incentives would be there to try and make this, if you will, morally acceptable. Because we know, particularly in the medical profession, and sorry to wax on about this for quite a while, but it's a big topic. We know that most doctors and nurses don't want to have a bar of this. I think like 90% of doctors overall just don't want to have a bar of it, which is why I would suggest to you they're putting more and more money in the Ministry of Health to try and coax, is that the right word, to encourage people to come over and assist. It's also why they're proposing new laws at the moment to remove the conscience rights of doctors, nurses and hospices. I mean, that should horrify anyone with a conscience or any sense of ethics. You know, the argument for euthanasia, guys, as you know, is all around autonomy. One makes the choice, but the Ministry of Health, important correction there, the Ministry of Health thinks that the autonomy of doctors and nurses should not be allowed. So, pretty bad, really. Pretty bad. Yeah, I like what Simply Green saying. The text, even with my glasses on, I'm sorry, Simply Green, hard for me to read. As I need to take a photo for you guys at one point. I literally have one little laptop screen here with all of the images that I display for you and all your comments. I struggle to read. Simply Green saying they aren't elderly, they're our elderly. And I think that's amazing. And yeah, Rosie saying, shouldn't it be the other way around? Yeah, I think if anything, it should be. I mean, palliative care is amazing. Doesn't mean it works all and every time, although actually palliative care physicians say they've got full options. Harrison says it shouldn't be allowed anywhere in the world, which, look, I would agree with, though I see France is moving towards it. But I shared on the positive side, that the UK, it looks like their euthanasia bill is going to fail. Jarena saying, thanks to Bob for highlighting this on X. Yeah, look, I think this is why X is so important. It's so important to have access to X, even if you don't tweet. I'm not sure what one does on X now. We used to tweet on Twitter. I'm not sure what one does on X. Maybe it's just post. Yeah, and Simply Green saying you want grandparents treated well. Yeah, absolutely. Look, as many of you know, look, I lost my grandparents personally years ago. But in the last, two and a bit years, Rachel and I have lost 3 of our 4 parents. So, death, suffering, retirement villages, hospital care, a variety of endings, shall we say, is very, very familiar to us. But anyway, as usual, I've prattled on far too long. I might actually jump to another topic. I wasn't going to immediately touch on it. I see someone mentioning COVID, and I have this little puppy here, because I see a couple of people mentioning COVID. I don't know if you've been reading Stuff, so the website Stuff, the news website Stuff, has put up a new podcast series, which I have to say is just totally galling. I've only skimmed some of the first ones, and I've just been obviously reading their summaries. Absolutely galling, and what can only be described, or what I can only describe to you, as puff pieces around COVID. And this headline, which starts it, just begins to give you an indication of the direction that it's going, which is romanticising what happened during the COVID years, praising the likes of Jacinda Ardern and Ashley Bloomfield and Susie Wiles and all the rest of them, ignoring to date much of the suffering. As I say, completely and totally galling in an attempt not so much to rewrite history, but to COVID wash it, for want of a better term. So look, if you want to go over to Stuff and read and listen, you're very welcome to. I would be ensuring you're sitting down and have a nice cup of tea close by, because it's going to absolutely increase your blood pressure as it did mine. The COVID days, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we could literally spend hours. But the COVID days, for some, it was a great experience. They loved it, as they were blissfully reporting here and Stuff. Oh, there's people we're talking to, they wish it would just happen every year, that we'd just shut the country down. It was just such a lovely experience. Well, I'm sure it was for some. a very small number. But I can remember just in my own then electorate, the absolute pain and suffering around the forced mandates, people who were losing their jobs, people whose mental health was declining because they were locked up in their homes, people whose businesses began to falter, then fail. Enormous stress. And I suspect many of you, or we all lived through it, but you'll have your own stories. It was an exceptionally difficult time. And look, I'm not going to speak too much about myself and Rachel, because that would probably bore you. I mean, we were in the more fortunate position. So I said myself, an MP, her, a teacher, we were able to carry on. Friends of ours who owned bakeries and restaurants and cafes, taxis, for example, it just stopped overnight. But I would say even for ourselves, the pressure to conform in different ways, particularly around the COVID vaccine, the exhaustion, I have to say, particularly in those early months where literally thousands of people were asking for help, I found it exhausting. I'm happy to help, but this was not I wish we have it every year. And actually, I just see forth out of I think it's possibly in relation to this, but it's gaslighting. In some ways it is. Anyone who speaks, and we're getting more and more people now talking about their COVID experiences. If I've read this comment in the right context, forth Adam is saying it's gaslighting, and I think it is. So I just thought it was absolutely appalling from COVID, a one-eyed, completely biased and prejudiced approach. As I say, COVID was handled perfectly. The government of the day was making the right decisions. A very glowing perspective on, as I say, everyone from Ashley Bloomfield to Jacinda Ardern to Chris Hipkins and Susie Wiles and that. To date, and look, need to say, hand on heart, I have not listened to all and every podcast or read absolutely every word. But to date, it's just been a glowing review. And I just think it's terrible. Let us not lock the country down again. Thanks very much. It has done enormous damage to this country. I was just in Australia, as you know, and Rachel and I were actually walking in one of the places where Jacinda's meant to be thinking of buying a property. And so that got us talking. And look, my political heritage and my bias, but be under no illusion, guys. She and the Labour government, Chris Hipkins as well, stuffed this country. Whether it's the economy, and look, you can throw as many stones as you want at the current government. I've thrown stones around their current spending, but they inherited an absolute mess. We have a country that is more divided than ever, be it on race or gender and sex, you name it, age, house ownership. They've divided us more than anything. It's just terrible. And then you get this absolute trollop from stuff. I might just end on one. Oh, actually, I'll just put this one up too. I don't know if you saw this in the news. This is the new Plymouth District Council a few days ago was flying a flag for an American festival that they hold every year. And I thought I would quickly share this because it's a free speech issue and it's a perfect illustration of the thug's veto and also what I would suggest would be likely hypocrisy. So, as I say, the context is the council is flying the American flag outside its building because they're having this American festival. So I assume from it it's about cars. That's what it looks like to me. Doesn't really matter though. So holding the festival, they're putting up the American flag. The council was at pains to say, look, they put up other countries' flags for various festivals. Of course, they put up the pride flag as well, and we'll come back to that. But completely normal. But you get a few whiners and complainers, and I suspect it's literally only a few, very upset because of what's happening in the Middle East, that no one should fly the American flag. No one seems to have asked those protesters whether they'd be preferring to fly the Islamic flag, but they don't like the American flag, so they're yelling and screaming, and lo and behold, the thug's veto takes hold, because what does the council do? They bring it down, which is totally the wrong thing to do, by the way. I doubt you're surprised at my view on that. Again, if this was actively supporting one country or side in the current conflict, that probably isn't appropriate. I mean, it certainly wouldn't be appropriate to fly the Iranian flag at the moment, or not the one of the Islamic regime. But this has got nothing to do with the conflict. But the thugs veto, a couple of people complain, the council backs down. Now, they shouldn't have. As I say, just because a couple of people complain is not enough of a reason. But the council did almost immediately, so any resistance, in this case, it came down. In the same way, you might remember after October 7th, not even hours after Hamas and other Islamic terrorists had killed over 1,200 Israelis, the likes of the Auckland Museum put its lights on in blue and white to acknowledge the death of Israelis. And within hours, Chloe Swarbuck and the rest of them were screaming and yelling, literally screaming and yelling how inappropriate it was, and quickly the museum backed down. Now, of course, had Auckland Museum back then lit up in pride colours, no way would any protest have changed that. And that's probably my last point on this. I bet you had this been the pride flag, or as I say, the flag of the Islamic Republic, or of Palestine, or any other sort of, woke issue of the day, there would be no way that the council would have brought it down. You could have had 500 people protesting outside to say it's inappropriate, and I bet you the council would have ringed that flagpole with security and made sure it stayed up. But when it's, in this case, something like the American flag, or if it's someone wanting to talk to a centre-right issue in a council building, or as I mentioned, the Auckland Museum in Israel, one or two complaints or a couple of screaming activists, and everything has to change. So I just think it's just wrong. And just wanted to sort of highlight that to you guys. And I probably will touch on this again next week, because once again I've run out of time because I talk too much. But I just wanted to say about time. I don't know if you have been following the news about the HMNZS, His Majesty's New Zealand ship Manawanui, which is it coming up a year and a bit now? I should have worked that out, but a long time since one sixth of our naval fleet was run onto a reef in Samoa and caught fire and sunk. Now, fortunately, no one died and there was no significant injuries, but an absolute embarrassment of the highest level. And finally, after all this time, 3 of the officers, including the captain here, Commander Yvonne Gray, is going to be court-martialed. Now, of course, they're not guilty until they're proven innocent, but they're up against some quite serious charges. Look, I think it's long overdue. Look, I don't know Commander Gray, but her and the other 2 officers meant to be in charge of the ship clearly failed, and they do need to be held to account. In fact, I'm surprised that from day one more people weren't held to account. In fact, I'll be completely blunt, I'm surprised that the Minister of Defence didn't resign, not because they were the ones directly involved, but it's a sign of responsibility. As I keep saying, when 1/6 of your naval fleet is sunk, $100+ million, and no one to date, no one has taken accountability. Again, either because they were or were not responsible, we'll find out through the courts martial, or even just a political symbolism. Gosh, even as the minister just to offer a resignation to say, look, this is a sign of, if you will, a contrition from the wider system. I don't know. But of course, all we got at the time, because look, to be fair, there were a lot, as they call it, armchair admirals accusing this of being a DEI hire, and then you get the reaction from the minister and others say, no, we can't even comment on any of that. Everyone sits down, has only just fueled things more, which has been unfortunate. But as people are asking, why has it taken so long? We just don't know, but it has taken too long for anyone to be held accountable. And Rosie's right, everyone is innocent till they're proven guilty. But it is just extraordinary that it's taken this long. And I don't know, it's not quite a sweep under the carpet, but I wrote a Substack a while ago about how the government tries to pour cold water on things, and I think this has been an example of it. They just don't want to talk about it, and they've tried to literally pour cold water on all in every angle. So we'll find out through the courts martial whether these officers, and there's 3 of them, were competent enough or not. Speaking of podcasts, the latest is my chat with Greg Fleming around his modern slavery bill. Please check that out, which is, I think, really good. Bob, of course, is busily writing on Substack. There you go. So look up McBlog on Substack. You can always find me on Substack as well. And final message before I close out. It's March for Life this weekend from 2 o'clock. We'll actually come from 1, but at 2 o'clock we start marching from the bottom of Queen Street up to effectively the top off Queen Street. So come and join us from 2 o'clock, and I'll sign out here with that little video some of you might have seen. But come and join us for March for Life and stand up for the little babies and the unborn.
Hello, New Zealand. March for Life. To march on behalf of the most vulnerable, the most precious, our children, our future. You are marching for mothers and fathers, for families, to support them, to nourish them, because we know that our countries are founded on families, are founded on the future, which is our children. Over 500,000 lives have been lost in New Zealand to abortion. Our movement is a winning one. This is the good news. Change is possible.